You know, when we talk about incredible systems of government in history, the name Umar ibn al-Khattab almost always comes up. His administration was a benchmark for justice, for efficiency, for accountability. But here's the thing, it wasn't something he just invented out of thin air. Today, we're going to dig into how his celebrated system was actually built, piece by piece, on the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. All right, let's get into it. Right from the start, Umar set the bar incredibly high. I mean, listen to that. This wasn't just about politics or being a good manager. For him, leadership was an act of faith. And to get it wrong, well, that was a betrayal of everything. This one quote really tells you everything you need to know about the philosophy we're about to explore. And that really gets to the heart of it. For Umar, a position of leadership was never a prize to be won. It wasn't about power or fame or personal gain. It was a sacred responsibility, a heavy, heavy weight that you had to be worthy of carrying. At the core of this whole mindset is the Islamic concept of amana, which means trust. And this isn't just some political buzzword, it's a deeply spiritual idea. The Prophet Muhammad taught that any authority you have is a trust from God, and you will be asked about it. This idea was the absolute bedrock of Umar's entire system. And this is really the main point of our whole discussion today. Umar's genius wasn't necessarily in creating brand new systems from scratch. It was in taking the blueprint for a just society that the Prophet had already laid out and then meticulously, systematically applying it on a huge scale. He was the ultimate project manager for a prophetic vision. So how did this actually work in the real world? Well, Umar had these clear, non-negotiable principles for choosing his governors and his leaders. It wasn't about who was the most powerful or who you knew. It was all about who best represented these core values. The first principle might actually surprise you. Before he looked at someone's strength or their strategic mind or their resume, Umar looked for one thing: compassion. He was convinced that mercy was an absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for having any power over other people. And where did he get this idea from? Straight from the Quran's description of the Prophet Muhammad himself. See, Omar figured, if the Prophet's own leadership was defined by mercy and kindness, then anyone claiming to follow him had to lead with that same quality. It's as simple as that. And he had this incredibly direct way of testing for it. There's this one powerful story where a man comes to him looking for a job as a governor. And while they're talking, Umar is just being a dad kissing one of his kids. The man, maybe trying to seem tough or something, says, I've never once kissed any of my own children.
And Omar's response was instant. No hesitation. For him, if a man couldn't show basic mercy and affection to his own family, how could he possibly be trusted to show mercy to the public? A lack of compassion wasn't just a red flag. It was a total disqualifier. Case closed.
Okay, so this focus on deep character leads right into the next principle. A true leader, in Umar's view, had to be willing to make incredibly difficult, even unpopular decisions, if it was for the long-term good of the people, even if that meant firing a national hero. And this was a huge deal. I mean, can you imagine dismissing your most successful, undefeated generals right at the peak of their careers? People were stunned. These guys were legends, the architects of massive victories. On the surface, it looked like a terrible move. But his reasoning, wow, it shows such a deep understanding of people and faith. He said he didn't fire them for doing anything wrong. He fired them because he was afraid the people were starting to depend on them too much, that they were beginning to think victory came from these men and not from God. He removed the heroes to protect the community from the dangers of hero worship. All right. The third key principle was this: you couldn't lead the people if you didn't have a deep understanding of Scripture and faith. To be a governor, you first had to be a guide and a teacher. This is such a brilliant example of how he saw the role. He was following the Prophet's model of appointing leaders who were also scholars. So when he appointed Abu Musa al-Ash'ari as the governor of Basra, a major new city, he wasn't just hiring a city manager, he was appointing the city's head Quran teacher. The political and the spiritual health of the city were seen as one and the same. And the impact was obvious. Years later, a famous scholar from that very city, al-Hasan al-Basri, said that no leader was ever better for the people of Basra than Abu Musa. It just goes to show you the long-term benefit of choosing leaders for their piety and knowledge, not just their political savvy. Okay, so let's say you get appointed. You've got the compassion, the knowledge, the selflessness. Well, that's just the beginning. Now comes the hard part, the accountability. Umar held his governors to a standard that was just incredibly high. This story about a sweet dish says it all. The governor of Azerbaijan sends this local delicacy, a fancy dessert, as a personal gift to Omar. What's Omar's first question? Not thank you, but did all the soldiers fighting out on the front lines get to eat this too? And when the answer was no, the gift went straight back. And he didn't just return it. He sent it back with a sharp, written warning. The message was unmistakable. A leader does not get to enjoy luxuries that his people don't have. You eat what they eat. You live how they live. Leadership is about sharing their experience, not escaping it. So when you add all of this up, the compassion, the selfless decisions, the knowledge, the extreme accountability, what's the point of it all? What's the final goal? How do you know if you've actually succeeded as a leader? While Omar gave the answer himself in this piece of advice to his governors, he told them that the worst person, the most miserable person, is the leader who makes his people miserable. Your failure as a leader is directly measured by the suffering of your people. And that right there is the bottom line. For Umar, building on that prophetic model, success wasn't about how much land you conquered or how much gold was in the treasury. The final report card was simple. Are the people you are responsible for content? Is their well-being looked after? Every principle, every rule, every hard choice was all driving toward that one single people-first goal. Which kind of brings us full circle to a question that every society in every era has to answer. When we look at this model of leadership, one based on trust and compassion and service, it really forces us to ask ourselves, today, in our world, what do we think is the true measure of a leader's success?